Welcome back to Something Is Up. Today's guest is Obanye, a friend, a fellow tech entrepreneur, and the creator of the Out of Body Stories YouTube channel. Although Emma is an engineer and spent the last 15 years building tech startups, so very grounded in rational and analytical thinking, a spontaneous out-of-body experience in her 20s opened the door to an interest that never really went away. Eventually, more recent profound experiences pushed her to start researching subjects like altered states of consciousness, lucid dreaming, and out-of-body experiences in a much deeper way. In this episode, Emma shares her journey from sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming to developing her own protocol for leaving the body and start exploring this invisible world that surrounds us. She also speaks about the fears that naturally arise when we step into the unknown. This is a very grounded and honest conversation that invites us to consider what if reality is far more mysterious and complex than we've been taught. So, thank you very much for watching, and let's begin. Hey Emma, good morning.
Hello.
Or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hey, Anto, how you doing? You all right?
I'm really good. So, just for the sake of being transparent, we've known each other for a long time. We are very good friends on a very similar journey, personally, let's say spiritually, professionally. So we worked in tech for a long time, even together in the same company in the UK at times.
Yep.
So we go way, way back. And both of our lives have shifted quite a bit in the last few years, I would say. So I've already introduced you before we started this conversation, but for the audience, do you want to give a bit of a background about who you are and basically how the hell you came to the point of launching a podcast about out-of-body stories?
Yeah, no, Anto, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon. And yeah, like as you say, we've known each other for a long time. I still remember our initial conversations where you were basically teaching me about how I should structure legal elements of my business and all of those things, which for me, massive, massive appreciation as always. But yeah, in terms of like, yeah, as you mentioned, like studied engineering, been on a similar path to you, so been working in tech the last 20 odd years now. And I would say that my journey, my journey with out of body experiences started more than 20 years ago. And in some ways you could go a little bit further back in that I've always, I think, being kind of a little bit more of a feeler, you know, like maybe a little bit more intuitive, certainly much more emotional. And I did engineering, and that really kind of pushed me into the, I would say, you know, the other side of my brain, so being more rational and logical and all of those things. But I do remember a time I used to write poetry, I used to write songs, you know, and I was very much, you know, I guess more on the art side of things. And about 23 years ago, I remember it because it was the World Cup in the UK, in Japan, I think. My brother gave me a book by Robert Monroe called Journeys Out of the Body. And actually, if I go back a little bit further, I'd had a few books. I'd read The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda when I was about 18 years old. My brother gave me this book called Seth Speaks, which was just like a completely, it expanded my mind massively. So if anyone doesn't know, it's a woman called Jane Roberts and her husband back in the 60s or 70s. He started channeling this entity called Seth. So I kind of had this like backdrop of like spiritual things, and I found them really, really fascinating. You know, at worst, sort of just amazing stories, but at best, like, you know, there's something here that's a little bit different. And then my brother gave me the book by Robert Monroe, and I read that book, thought it was fascinating, absolutely loved it, but I didn't really, you know, it didn't prompt me to do anything with it. until one day, I think it was England versus Brazil in the World Cup in Japan and South Korea. I woke up at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or something to watch this game, I think the quarterfinals. And then I, watched the game. I think England lost, went back to bed. And the next thing you know, I should feel my hand going through my mattress. And I was at my mum's place in North London. And I was like, straight away, my brain just was like, I was so excited. And I was like, oh my God, it's finally happened. So like that book and all the things that Robert Monroe was talking about, it exists, right? I was like, oh my God, it's happened. And I just remember my first thought was, oh my God, I need to get somebody to put something under my bed so that the next time this happened, because I thought, oh, it's going to happen every night. The next time this happens, I can validate that this happened. I was just thinking scientifically about like, how can I validate this thing, phenomena? And then obviously, it was probably like one of 5 times that it spontaneously happened since then. I had loads of lucid dreams after that point, but never, like very few experiences like that. But the experiences I did have from that point on were always like, a limb going through the mattress, like or maybe a leg or, but always with my eyes closed. This is important to say. I could feel it. I could feel the tingling around whatever the limb was that was going through. So I could feel it, but I couldn't see. I had no experience, like no validity of actually what was going on in my environment. And then I think I told my brother, and I think that was the point my brother started to share with me his experiences. And so my brother, he's a scientist, really, he has a PhD in biochemistry and, he's very, very rational, but he is very, very, like, he's an amazing artist. He's a musician, he has that. So I'd say he's like both sides of his brain, if you could call it that, are very developed. But he started to share with me experiments he was doing with out-body experiences. So he started to share with me his sort of diaries. He would actually set an alarm every night at around 3-4 a.m. and he would try and induce an out-of-body experience. And so I started to read his experiences. Again, it didn't prompt me to want to try and do it. I knew what his technique was, but at this point I was still young. I was enjoying life, all of those things. And I just left it, really. I left it. I knew it was an incredible experience. Every so often, I'd ask people, I'd ask a friend, like, have you ever had sleep paralysis? Because I would get sleep paralysis, just so you know, like I would always wake up in this, this weird, scary kind of experience where you can't move, followed by this intense energy, I would say. And then if it happens, it would maybe happen off that point. But at this point, I didn't really understand it.
Was the energy like shaking you? It was like being in a earthquake or sort?
I always describe it as, and obviously I have no idea what epilepsy is like, but I would always, because I had a friend, or I have a friend who has epilepsy, and always felt as though my body was shaking like that. So it just felt like this intense energy is the best way to describe it, where I felt like I couldn't, and maybe it's me trying to like resist it, but not being able to move. And I eventually, after many years of experiencing this, understanding that I wasn't dying, because it feels like you're dying or something, like you're having a heart attack. I don't know, like you're dying. That's what I remember, the first sensations. But once it subsides, I understood that it would subside, and I just need to wait it out, basically. And then I realized, so that happened, didn't do anything. And then it was about a year ago, maybe a bit more than a year ago, I've reached a point in my career where I was like, okay, like I'm so, like, I've almost stripped all of the, artistic side, intuitive side of me away. Like, I feel like all of the things, the little experiences I'd have, the deja vus, the sort of like intuition that I had when I was younger had disappeared. And, I had a few experiences, whether it be ayahuasca and mushrooms and various other experiences. I felt like I was missing something. And so about a year and a half ago, I made this decision to try and get it back and to try and live a more sort of, I don't know, like just get that creativity, that intuitive aspect of me back. I mean, not the creativity, but the intuitive side. So I started doing courses, like I did a tarot course, and just lots of other little things. And then I think it was actually a video, maybe it was Chris Ramsey, Area 52, but I think I saw on his podcast, like a very early show, where I think he started talking about out-of-body experiences, but he started talking about it from the perspective of the CIA, the declassified files. And that was the point when I was like, whoa, okay, I think I saw that Robert Monroe had actually been working with the military to train them on how to have out-of-body experiences. And that, for me, with all of the things with disclosure and all of this stuff that was going on, I was like, hold on, there's something here. I feel as though whenever you look at, whether it be the telepathy tapes, a lot of this stuff that's happening at the moment that's going a little bit more mainstream or remote viewing, that out-of-body experience or that sort of the phenomena, whether you know, this altered states, there's always an aspect of it that's connected. So I really thought to myself, do you know what? I want to subjectively prove to myself that all these things that I'm hearing are true. So my whole thing was like, okay, let me go into this out of body experiences thing a bit. Let me try and have a controlled one and see for myself. So it's a bit of a long-winded way of saying it, but that was my way in.
Understood. And so, can you describe a little bit, maybe what the type of experiences that your brother was having and was logging in his diary?
Yeah. So my brother never, from what I understood, never left his room, but he would have mixed experiences. So he would have lots of lucid dreams, right? Which for anybody that it's when you're sort of awaking within a dream, right? But from what I've learned now, a lucid dream is a way to you can enter an out of body experience via a lucid dream. So that's quite interesting. But he was having experiences where he would exit his body, he'd see his body sleeping, and on many occasions he'd see an entity in his room. And he'd sort of like, he wasn't scared of the entity, if I remember correctly. But I think his whole thing was like, can I control this state? Can I actually make it happen? Can I navigate a little bit around? But I don't think he got further than his room or his house, or certainly in the out of body state. I know in the lucid dream state, he's, could fly around and do lots of other things that people also sort of discuss. But in the out of body, I think it was always just within his environment.
Understood. And he created his own protocol to be able to do that? Was he following Monroe's protocol, an hybrid? How was he inducing?
Yeah, I think he realized that to get to sleep paralysis, so a lot of people, there are lots of different ways to get to an out of body, which I didn't realize at the time. I always thought it was just via sleep paralysis. So I knew that from him that it was like, how can you get to that state? And for him, the way to do that was, I think what I've later found out is called the wake back up method or wake up method or something, which is where you essentially go to sleep, wake up in maybe the middle of your cycle, read a book or just do something, read a book, listen to a podcast, whatever it is, and then go back to sleep. And I've realized when I started to try and do this every day, I realized that was my most consistent way of being able to get to sleep paralysis. And I think there's some theory, I don't know how much scientific truth there is to it, right? Or how much has been tested. But certainly for me, I realized, because I've got one of these like aura rings, that actually that time for around 4 a.m. for me anyway, is when I'm consistently able to get into REM sleep. And I think there are some teachers that sort of talk about it's when you're in that state that sleep paralysis happens. So if I looked at my sleep, I might get into REM, maybe it's very inconsistent. It's not at a consistent time in the first half of my sleep, but in the second half, it is always around that time. So you can see, and actually a massive amount of my REM sleep is around that time. So I think it makes kind of sense. But, when you go back to sleep again, if you are conscious or you kind of like, set yourself an affirmation or just like set yourself that intention of actually, I'm going to try and induce this state, if you do go back into that sort of sleep and your mind is awake, you're more likely to kind of be like, okay, get into it. I've found some interesting things out recently, actually. I'm starting to, notice a few other things, but certainly that was the protocol he was following. I'm not exactly sure where he got it from. I think he was looking at lots of different things, but that's the protocol that certainly worked for me.
Understood. And so most recently you've been trying to create your own protocol or to follow different protocols to experiment it yourself?
Yeah, so after I started the channel, I actually, no, a year ago, so it was exactly a year ago, I started looking at, I think I saw that Chris Ramsey podcast. I saw a coach or a OBE teacher called Graham Nichols on Chris Ramsey's podcast. And so I was kind of like, I was looking specifically for a teacher or a course that I could take to actually take me through this. So originally, I think I looked at that. And then I saw, I think, Darius as well. I discovered Darius J. Wright. And I saw that he had a course for, I think, $200 or something. So I paid for that course and I started to like look through all of his content. And he had three protocols. None of those protocols are the one that works for me. They were slightly different protocols. One which was like more around like, lying down and waiting, just trying to keep your mind awake, body asleep. So just wait until your body falls asleep. One which is around like binaural beats, that he's got some binaural beats specifically, and I can't remember what the third one was. I think it was a lucid dream method. But what I actually found, and I found this straight away after listening to him, what I would do, because I knew that the wake back up method worked for me, like I knew that I could get to sleep paralysis from there. And he talks about that extensively, right? So Darius does. So what I was doing was I started trying to wake up at 4 a.m. And what started happening to me is that I would, and it still happens now, every night at 4 a.m., I will wake up. Now, most of the time I can roll back to sleep, but I started just waking up at that time and I put on things to listen to. Sometimes it'll be, Darius's videos. And the first time it happened, I was just listening to one of his videos about like the exit process or something. And then next thing you know, boom, I had sleep paralysis. And then I could feel, it's a weird thing to say, but I could feel that my body was out. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was almost as though because I was listening to this audio or the video that where he was talking about that exit process, and as if all of a sudden my body was aware that I was out. So I knew I was out. So I was like, oh my God, I'm out. So on that particular occasion, I was like, okay, let me open my eyes. So, and I had tried previously to open my eyes, but I'd always wake up. But on this occasion, I was able to open my eyes in the out of body state. And to my surprise, it was nighttime, obviously. So it was like 4 a.m. in September or whatever. And when I opened my eyes, I was in my bedroom as expected, in my bed. The room was almost like a new version of my room. So not to say my room is old, but it was just like a fresh, like really white, really like clean version of my room. And there was like a twilight light, like hue coming through, like really. And I was like, wow, it was just like, what's going on? And then I just thought to myself, I want to see my hat. So I just like pulled my hand up like this. And I never forget it. It was like, I could see like a see-through hand, like, and I could feel the tingling sensation. As I said, when my hand was I could feel this tingling sensation through my hand. And the best way to describe it was like, I felt like it was like a mannequin hand. And I never I remember thinking, oh my God, there's like a mannequin hand there, like see-through hand. And then I just got really a mixture of fear and excitement, the two things, because I was like, what if an entity, is there going to be something, is there something here? Like I was kind of like that. And then I was just like, oh my God, it's like, I got so excited that, oh my God, I'm finally being able to see in this state. And so I just got this thing of like, I want to remember this. I want to remember it. So I made this choice to wake up so I could write down everything. And so I woke up and wrote it all down. And then I thought, wow, I was got really excited because I was like, oh my God, it happened straight away, like a week after buying this course. But again, you know, as it is with these things, it's not as simple as that. Like there's obviously some connections were made, but I haven't quite mastered almost like the neural pattern of like how all of these parts of the process are initiated. So that was one of, I think, 2 experiences I've had. But most recently, yeah, I can leave it there. Most recently, I've been experimenting a little bit. I've noticed something else, and I've been able to induce a lot of lucid dreams, which I think,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
uh,
Describe.
yeah, should I go
What
into that?
happened? Yeah.
So, obviously, in the channel, I've been, so my channel, Out Body Stories, my whole thing's about interviewing other people who've had these experiences, you know, just obviously to put these stories out there, just regular people who are having these experiences, what they're going through, what techniques they're using, and all of the weird and wonderful things around that. And I had a guy on, an amazing guest a few weeks ago called Vlad. And so he kind of outlined his whole experience. And one of the things he talked about, what I loved about him, is that he went into quite meticulous detail of the experience. And that's how you know, like somebody's, you know, when somebody's really focused on the process, you know, there's just like little things that you take in, that you absorb. And I remember he was talking about, he had a couple of like pure out of body experiences. And then he had a handful of like lucid dreams. But as I've mentioned, there's a way to enter the out of body experience via lucid dream. And he was just, you know, talking about how much he loved those lucid dream experiences. I've had loads of lucid dream experiences, but not necessarily, you know, I've never tried to induce it. But what I've realized recently, so he made a couple of comments. One, that he would have a lucid dream, like what he would do instead of, so when I was having my out of body experiences, to get to sleep paralysis, I would always have to sleep on my back. So that's another part of my process, right? Sleep on your back. And I don't usually sleep on my back. I usually sleep on like my side or front. So he made this point, which was like, actually, he started having lucid dreams when he was on his side. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting point. I don't know. I was just like, okay, let me try that. And he said something about the fact that it was more comfortable. And I was just kind of, I don't know, it resonated with me. I was like, okay, I'm going to try that tonight. And then he said something else, which was, what was it now? Just, I think it was just about like the intention setting, which a lot of people talk about. And like, that's another one for me. I think the intention setting is really important. So just making the intention of wanting to have the experience, and the hands thing, which again, like when you have a lucid dream, actually, the more you focus on an object, and a lot of people talk about the hand. If you focus on your hand, it brings the experience into more focus. And that's how you enter into the out of body. So when it becomes really focused, then it's like you go into the out of body. So that night, like I woke up at 4 a.m. as usual. I couldn't go back to sleep. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to chuck on a podcast. So I was listening to some random podcast. And at some point I was, you know, I would like listen to it. And at some point it changed, you know, like when you finish a podcast on YouTube or whatever, and then it'll just like play some random stuff. And it started playing, of all people, Alan Watts. Do you know Alan Watts is like philosopher, British? And I don't know what it was. There was something, and I've tried this 3 times now, and all 3 times I've gone into a lucid dream. But there's something about his voice mixed with music. He's got this amazing articulate. For anyone who has never heard him, he talks a lot about just philosophical ideas, and you know, I think he used to like a great orator in the 70s, having these lectures and things. And there are a lot of people who just like put his voice to like, and the things he's saying to music. And for whatever reason,
Triggers you.
it triggers me. I think there's something about how relaxing it is, but it's not so interesting. Like it's not like a podcast that you're trying to stay awake to. But it's just like, for some reason, it puts me in the in-between state. And that's what I call it now. It's like this
Frequency thing,
in-between
probably.
state. Sorry?
A frequency thing rather than content related things, right?
Yeah, it's
Probably.
like, yeah, something like that. And I go into this, I call it an in-between state, because the first time it happened, I I was just like listening to it. Maybe I'm in between sleep, some asleep awake, asleep awake. And all of a sudden, I started noticing these fractals in my mind's eye. And I was like, I was like, oh my God, I'm in this in between. I'm in the in between state. I don't know why, but I knew I was like in the in between. I don't know how to describe it, but I just knew. I was like, I'm not awake and I'm not asleep. I'm in this other state. So I started just focusing on the fractals. And after a little while, the fractals turned into a scene. And no joke, right? In the scene, it was me and my partner in there. And I was like, I got really freaked out because I was like, I'm in a lucid dream and I can see myself. So I got really freaked out because I was like, again, I've spoken to a lot of like OBEs and some of them talk about seeing themselves. And I don't know why, but it scared me and I woke up. And then I
Understood.
tried it again the next evening, again. And I went, do you know what? I'm putting straight putting on whatever the Alan Watts I was listening. Let me look at my history, put it back on. It's on my side. And it happened again. And again, I saw the fractals or the like visuals. And for me, just to say, it wasn't like, 4D visuals. It was, I had this, I think my mind's eye is not very clear. So it's like I would say almost like grayscale, kind of like faint fractals, but I could see the spinning and I could see its fractals. And I got that again. And I got, again, my brain was aware again. I'm in the in-between. I'm in the in-between state again. And then yesterday, again, I got it again. I just knew I was in the in-between state. I knew I was not awake and I wasn't asleep. I was in the in-between state, and then it morphed into a scene. And I started, again, looking at my hands. And I could say I was in a bedroom with a barn door, like these kind of like a country door, like this kind of barn door, like that, like white wood, like planks of wood with like
Yep.
diagonal wood. And I don't know, yeah, it's like a British country door. And I was on a bed with like black headstand, front stand with what do you call it? Bars, black bars. And I started like I got that again, freaked out a little bit, like, oh my God, like a little bit scared again because I'm in a space and I was like, is anyone going to come through the door? I was kind of a bit like, oh my God. But I started like focusing on my hands and the scene was becoming more clear. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, I started to do that, but with my real eyes. And then I woke up and I was like, oh no.
So
So yeah,
a lot of people would say that you were dreaming, right?
Mm,
And which is normal, is the first thought.
yeah.
What is your sensation? What makes you believe? I mean, I understand the definition of lucid dreaming, but
Mm.
you talk about knowing. What is the sensation that makes you believe that that's not just a dream?
No, I think because the lucid dream state, so the out of body state, there's two distinct states, right? The out of body, so I'll touch on the out of body state, the physicality, like, and again, it's the same thing I'm getting from everyone I'm talking to who's had an out of body. It's the physicality or the just distinct things like being in your room and, seeing your room, seeing the clarity, like it's kind of similar to waking consciousness. You're seeing this clarity. You've got physical sensations. It's not just, the sort of visual sensation you get when you're having or audio sensation. Like it's almost like a number of your senses are switched on. So not just like a couple of them. So that really got me, like the hand, and actually waking up and still feeling that sensation. So
Okay.
that's something I didn't mention. So every time that I've had, out of body experiences with my eyes closed, knowing that my legs go, that limb will be energized. There's an energy running through that limb, which I find fascinating. And it's, it's not like it's been cut off. The blood supply's been cut off, which seems like that could be, that might be a valid, it's nothing to do with that. It's like what's going on? Why is that particular limb or hand or whatever it is energized, right? So that physicality, that sensation, like I said, I've not had like a full blown out of body experience. I'm really looking forward to, validating whether or not I can open doors and all these things that people are talking about, and touch and smell. And so that I'm excited to experiment with. The lucid dream, what I find fascinating about that is just the ability to go anywhere you want. The fact that it is like waking consciousness in terms of the way that you see things. Like, so a lot of my dreams, like most people, you can't really make sense of it. You don't remember it. But in a lucid dream, all of a sudden, it's like, you're conscious again. You're conscious in the dream. You can do whatever you want. You can, navigate things. But you have the sequential consciousness, that sequential stream of consciousness going on. So your memory of it is sequential, which for me is fascinating. And obviously, I want to also check whether or not I want to explore that in more detail. I've had, really interesting lucid dreams in the past that have been mind blowing. A couple of them were quite mind blowing, but I was just playing around. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know any theory about it. I just knew that I could have these experiences, and I just did what I wanted to in those experiences without experimenting in defined ways, to actually test the validity of these experiences or what I could do in these experiences.
It's extremely interesting. And because we talked about it before, I got myself a couple of times to the sleep paralysis and the shaking thing, and I freaked out completely, and I tried in a possible way to get out of the paralysis. And
Yeah.
I have the sensation that I almost got to the out of body. I had the sensation of my arm, etc. as well. But then I realized that I wasn't into my own room. It was a different environment. So it was an out of body. So it was a lucid dream type of experience. And the question that I have is, because once I started doing research like you on this subject, and a lot of people that have these experiences then start growing into spiritual practices, etc., etc. Do you think that this is something that anybody can do? And it's simply a matter of applying the protocol that works for you, but it's absolutely mathematical. You find your protocol, you follow through, you're going to have this experience? Or is it your soul that decides whether or not you're going to have this experience? If you're not ready, even if you follow the perfect protocol, it's not going to happen to you. So how scientifically replicable this kind of experience is? Do you have an idea about it? What's your
Do you know what?
perception?
I think that's a great question, Antonio, because as I've started going on this journey in terms of the channel, interviewing people, it started to really open up my mind a little bit more. Like I said before, like I used to just think it was just this narrow process it always had to go through sleep paralysis. And so I'd ask people, have you ever had sleep paralysis? Some people are like, yep. Some people are like, no. Like maybe 25% of people, I think, when you look online, they say report having sleep paralysis. So I used to think, okay, this is just, a small subsection of people. Maybe it's a neurological thing. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And as I'm starting to really change my view on it. So I did an interview with Graham Nichols, so the OBE coach that I was talking about before, that I saw on Chris Ramsey's podcast. And what's interesting about him, he's had over 1,000 OBEs, right? So he's really experimented to death in it. He's worked with Rupert Sheldrake and other really kind of credible scientists to verify this experience, doing a lot of like experiments with this. And he's very, very, what I love about him is very much on top of, okay, yes, there's all this stuff going on, but you got it on my show. I only really talk about, like, look, I've had crazy experiences now, and I've had some great chats with him offline about the types of experience, but he normally talks about the ones that have been that he can verify. where other people were in the room or other people experienced it as well. So maybe not scientific, but at least that there were other witnesses, let's say. So I think that's really
Witnesses of what?
important.
Witnesses of
One of the
what? Because
stories he talked about, like, so he, in 1999, I mean, this one blew my mind, and I saw it on Chris Ramsey's podcast. He talks about it on there. So in 1999, he was teaching a bunch of people, so a couple of friends and others, how to have an out-of-body experience, and he's developed his own techniques to do it. And so he shut his body down, went into an OBE, and when he was in that OBE, he saw a bomb going off in Soho in London, and he was able to really pull back real details about where he was, the road he was on, just things that he saw going on. And then eventually he came to, and as he came to, basically the people with him, they were like trying to bring him back, because they'd seen that he when he was going into the OB state, he didn't look right. He looked like he was a little bit like he was having a few issues, let's say. And he came back and he told them all about what he'd seen, right? No joke, a week later that happened. So that was the nail bombing in Soho. Happened a week later. And now, like, again, what was that? Like, he pulled back the road. He pulled back the fact there was a bombing, there was screaming, details that, yeah, you could say it's coincidence, but what a coincidence, that happened exactly a week later. And he had a similar thing with, I think it was London bombings and other things. But that one, there were 5 other people in the room who he told that to. And then obviously, after it happened, they were all freaked out, right? But they did talk about it because they were like, what, trying to rationalize it. Oh, maybe, trying to rationalize it as best as they could. But I find that really, really interesting. And there are other people that talk about time events. So I think there's a lot that we don't know about what these types of experiences are, because he's not the only one. There's a few other people I've interviewed, even a woman yesterday, talking about witnessing possible, just like potential futures. And look, I'm not saying that these are true, but it's a phenomena that comes up in this space. So anyway, going back to him, yeah, I really like the fact that he's doing that. But one of the things I realized from him is that there's lots of different ways to have an OBE, which I didn't realize. Like, the ways that he's developed are kind of like from conscious states. So it's almost like getting into that altered state, but not from the sleep state. You know what I mean? I always used to think it was the sleep state, but it's not a sleep state. It's like an in-between state. It's like an altered state, which again, you see with channelers, you see Jane Roberts, you see it in all these different things. Like, it feels as though there is this spectrum of consciousness, no? We talk about, 2, 3 states. There seems to be a state that people are getting into that is maybe a frequency or whatever, which is this out of body. So I realized, like, actually, there are a couple of people I've interviewed now who have done it through doing Joe Dispenza meditation. Like, Vlad was one, and so was there's another woman I've got a podcast coming out soon with somebody, and she said the same, and I found that so interesting. So they went on more of a spiritual journey. So they came to it through meditation, which again speaks to what Graham and others are saying, which is like there are lots of different ways to get to it, like meditative states and things. So for some people, it forced a spiritual awakening. And I think, to be honest with you, to answer your question, I've gone on a little bit of a tangent there, but to answer your question, I feel like you probably need to unlock aspects of yourself to get there. One of them being fear. So the fear, fear of death, fear of, what this type of state is. Like, there's a lot of that, and maybe, in some ways the spiritual journey helps you to do that. There's like, a way of kind of like, there are things that you might need to go through, like certain lessons that you need to, or like I said, whether it be fears and things that you need to strip away before you are in a better state to go through it. And then obviously, like if you're doing meditation or you're doing these like disciplines that require focus and attention, you could argue there is a spiritual element to that, right? Of being still, of being, at one with your thoughts and being able to kind of. So yeah, I'm realizing I think there is an element, but I do think everybody can learn it. And it really, even with what I was going to say with Graham is I've started to I'm doing coaching with him now, actually, because I really want to kind of like be a bit more disciplined with this and try to get to these states. And one of the things that he did say when I spoke to him on my podcast, but also he always talks about, it's like you have to have this deep awareness of yourself, because actually getting to those states requires you to be able to like, calm down, be stress free. You talked about like not having coffee anymore, like, all these kind of things that if you're like really busy and your life is all over the place, you're not going to really be able to get into those states. You need to, whether it be, you need to be more disciplined. You need to have a practice, I think.
Understood.
So, yeah.
So you're having coaching lessons now, which
Mm,
means that you really want to experience this
yeah.
to the next level. But
Yeah.
what's happening to you personally in this journey? So
Mm,
from being the engineer like I am, working in tech, although you always had these experiences, you've always been very artistic, uh, have you noticed a particular change in the last few years or since you started the
mm,
podcast or the practice in a more consistent way in terms of
mm,
the way you see life, the way you see reality? Are you noticing
yeah.
any major changes in your way to live your life?
Yeah. I think when I first started about a year and a half ago of like, being more intentional about bringing more, you know, people would say woo woo practices into my life. Like I started to notice things, and I noticed when I started to strip away certain things. So one thing I probably haven't told a lot of friends is that this year I stopped using particular social networking sites. So I think it's only really YouTube and WhatsApp and Telegram, right, that I'm using now. But I'm not using, the posts ones like video with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn. I've stopped using them. And also I've stopped consuming mainstream news as well. And I think a lot of that, because I was like, it's a massive distraction. There's a lot of fear and a lot of like, just, I don't know, my energy was just all over the place. The other thing I noticed, and I stopped because I was doing it almost every day. Like I was trying to get into the state almost every day for a while. And I started to get like, this is going to sound so wild, but I started to get these like clear audio experiences. I had a couple of like experiences where, like intuitive experiences where I knew someone was going to call me, or I heard something and I heard like my mum once in a kind of again in a in between state. And then called her the next day and she was like, yeah, I was thinking about you, just things like that, which I was like, whoa, this is freaky. No, but I kind of felt like, is this just me stripping away layers of, you know, all of these, I don't know, conditioning and things that we kind of just pick up in our normal day to day and then we don't realize. Um, these days, I would say, and also just like by speaking to people, going more into this kind of world, I'm realizing that there is a bit of a spiritual journey that I think you need to, there's an aspect of it. Not everybody needs to go as deep, but there is an aspect to it, I think. And so I've been a bit scared. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm kind of scared to go fully. I'm almost like my toes dipped in, but I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to put my whole body in yet because I'm scared about what's going to happen, like, because it is a bit of a journey that I'm going on. And I'm kind of, part of me, in some ways I'm trying to work out as well the next move, you know, like a little bit of like, actually, what are the next 10 years going to look like? What do I want to focus on? And in some ways I'm like, okay, maybe there's an aspect of this that's part of my, you know, future. And I kind of, maybe there's, yeah, it's weird because sometimes it kind of aligns, right, with what's going on in your life. And maybe I have to make that transition. So I'm all in before I dip my whole body in, type thing. So that
And
analogy
the
makes sense.
fear, yeah, it makes sense. And the thing is, the fear is kind of understandable, right? Because it's the fear of the
Mm,
unknown. We all have this kind of fears,
yeah.
um, one way or the other, to different levels. But
Mm,
so, what brings you to overcome the fear? What is the drive? What is the objective that keeps you
mm.
going, no matter the fear?
Yeah. Do you know what? You know what it is? I'm really sure there's something here. Um, I have theories about what it might be, you know, like, does our consciousness survive death? Like, that's a theory, right? Is there something in that? Uh, it's almost like I'm, you know, Alice in Wonderland, that I'm scared to go down the rabbit hole because I know that actually it's going to be difficult for me to come back. And you know how it is with these things, like you do ayahuasca and you're like, whoa, okay, you're not going to be the same person. Do you know what I mean? After that experience, like for good or for bad. And like you say, it's just the fear of the unknown. So I'm kind of like, I know that what's going to happen? Am I going to have this shift that I can't come back to? How's that going to impact my family? How's that going to impact my day to day? Am I going to like get to a point where I'm like, you know what? Actually, some of the things I'm doing in my day to day are just nonsense. Because, you know, I guess it's the existential questions we all on one level. I'm like, I want to know all the answers to, you know, all the biggest questions. But at the same time, I'm like, what if I get those answers and it takes me somewhere else? So that's the thing that I'm kind of grappling with, I guess. And then there's like, yeah, it's just it's a tricky one. But the more and more I have conversations with people, and that's the thing, the more of these conversations I'm having, the more I'm like, whoa, is this what's gonna happen? Like, am I gonna like, you know, yeah, just I don't know how I'm gonna I would take having just this more awareness to that degree. I don't know how, you know, people talk about, oh, like some of the is it Brooke and Vlad were talking about is it the shadow, was it the dark night of the soul,
Of
and
the
you know, all
soul.
these kind of things. And so I'm just like, wow, just it's much deeper than I thought. It isn't just like have an out of body and like, you know, woohoo. No, it's like have about out of body and completely change your worldview or the way you see life. And that's I, I need to, I don't know. I'm like, am I waiting for the right point to have, I don't know. I,
So
yeah,
there's
it's,
something that is pulling you towards it, but there's still a lot of
mm,
fear that
yeah.
is holding you back. Shall I go
I think
all in? Shall I
to
wait?
go all in. So I am definitely like having the out of body. I definitely want to experience it. And I am doing that, right? But I guess it's like, knowing that potentially if I go out of body, that's going to open more questions and more and more. And am I just going to keep opening all of these boxes? And where's that going to take me? But definitely the out of body. I want to have it. I want to have it. I want to navigate around my room. I want to like test it a little bit more. And let's see where we go from there.
Absolutely. Understood. So one of the hypotheses, and we've had this conversation many times. One of the hypotheses that I have been putting on the table, and that it's also the foundation of the podcast that I relaunched uh, this month, is that a lot of these experiences that seem different, out of body experiences, near death experiences,
Mm,
UFO, experiences where whether you say that you get abducted or simply you connect to an entity that speaks to you telepathically, or what the kids say in the telepathy tapes, or channeling or mediumships, etc. There is a connection, there is an underlying reality, and those are all experiences and expressions probably of an underlying some people think universal consciousness field or quantum field or whatever, or another reality, another dimension, etc., etc. But all these people that talks about different experiences describe very, very similar things. Is that your perception as well? Is that do you see those dots connected throughout all the interviews that you've done, the experiences that you had?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's what fascinates me the most, like that all of these things seem to be connected. And actually, this is that was the whole thing for me. I was like, actually, I want to have an out of body experience because I want to subjectively know if that's the truth. If there is something here that I can pull back that tells me that these things are true. So telepathy takes great example, right? Out of body experiences come up in that as well. And you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. So, I was talking to a lady yesterday where she was having this telepathic, like, so she's an out of body experiencer, but also has been, I think, doing some telepathy experiments. And again, able with, obviously it's not scientific, but they were recorded these experiences, doing it with random people and coming up with 90% like crazy, um yeah, just being able to verify and validate this with other people. So I'm kind of like, there's something here, all of these things connect, and I feel like this is the way to know for yourself if there's something there.
Yeah. When I look at it from my point of view, I get particularly not upset, but actually pissed off because so you use the term woo woo, and there is a lot of this is woo woo for the vast majority of people that tune into this kind of conversation, right? We know, or we have a strong feeling that it's not woo woo, that is just a deeper layer of reality that you can attune to in certain ways. But when you start looking into it, you also realize that this is not new. That governments, you were talking about CIA files, etc.,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
scientists working into particular programs know way more than they let on publicly. And so we remain having to experience or to believe that we're approaching ridiculous things when instead governments around the world have been spending millions and millions and millions, if not billions, in research of this field, but the majority of this research is secret still, right? And
yeah,
how transformative would it be for them to release only part of what they've discovered in the last 50, 60, 80 years, etc., right? So
yeah,
that's
for
mind
sure,
blowing.
for sure. And that's the, I guess that's what we're all so interested in, right? Is like, how much do our governments know? How much is being locked up, and how much of this sort of materialist scientific is it almost like a guise to kind of keep it hidden? Like, oh, it needs to be scientifically validated before we even take on that narrative. The fact that a lot of these things that we are seeing aren't even covered by mainstream press, when you're like, surely there's something here that we should explore further. The telepathy tapes is a great example. Listening to that podcast, I'm like, okay, Yes, it's not something, well, there's something there. There's something there. Surely somebody's going to put some money behind it, and or there already are, and we just don't know about it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they just want to keep us in the dark because there is something really profound about the nature of our reality, maybe consciousness not being localized in our body, all of those things. And now I find
Yeah.
that fascinating. That's what I want to prove to myself, that consciousness is not here, but it's somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that there's, I don't know, I've never been religious, and I started becoming more spiritual in the last couple of years due to personal things.
Mm,
Losing my dad, losing one of my best friends a couple of years ago,
mm,
triggered the
yeah.
need to find a way to connect and start exploring this. And
Mm,
like you, I wanna, if this shit is real, there must be a way for me to know it personally, physically, to right. And so
mhm,
that was the trigger to going deeper into this subject. And right now I have no personal doubt anymore. Again, as an engineer, I cannot say I'm 100% certain, because I need to
mm,
leave space for doubt and for potential new discoveries. But I would say that I'm 90% certain that there's a much wider reality that we don't see,
yeah.
and that in some circumstance, whether you are in an altered state of consciousness because you had a mushroom ceremony, or you were talking about ayahuasca. I never tried ayahuasca, so I don't know what that experience looks like. Or whether
Mm,
you're meditating, or whether you are in a out of body experience induced by um, a lucid dream. But those are simply states to get you into an altered state of consciousness that open up yourself to a completely different reality. And
mm,
no matter who you talk to, the majority of people describe the same reality when they get to that point, right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Totally.
So what's next for
Totally.
you? Continuing your personal research and your personal exploration through other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to continue doing the interviews. I really enjoy having these conversations because you just learn so much about other people's techniques, the way they see life, just things that you can also try out. I'm going to continue having my coaching with Graham and hopefully document that as well to put on the channel. And just generally, I think just looking at how we can get more techniques out to more people. Because I think, yeah, a lot of techniques are sort of gated and not sort of made available. And actually, I want to explore that a little bit more, as well as the science around it, and make that available. Exploring a graphic novel as well at the moment, which I'm actually quite excited about, because I think there's yeah, yeah, just a little personal project. So what I love about this is that it's like a hobby that's just like, it's just something that for me I'm personally exploring and developing, and I'm developing, but also the content and the product is developing as I'm speaking to more and more people, and just gaining ideas and doing creative things also is a great outlet for me. I love that aspect of it as well, like just the creative side of it. So I just want to continue. I'm hoping, yeah, by this time next year to have had a couple of, quite profound experiences. Um, and yeah, maybe when I've had a few, I can come back on here and share them with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
so the other thing is, you started very focused on OBEs. That was your objective, right? That
Mm,
was, you wanted to explore that angle. And
yeah.
now quite a few people on your show departed from the simple OBE and started describing completely different worlds, contact with entities. Some are call it
Mm,
extraterrestrial, extra dimensional, or whatever you want to call them. How is
mm.
this affecting you, and what's your perception? How is your perception changing? Are you opening up as well to exploring more? Is that still a bit more? Oh, I don't know if I want to go there.
Do you know what? That I guess in some ways that's part of my fear, which is that, look, I think these are incredible stories. And, you know, the lady I was talking to yesterday, she's had experience with dragon entities, you know, and you're kind of like, whoa, how, what? But at the same time, and maybe that is, yeah, one of my fears is like, what am I going to see? What paradigm is going to have to shift in my head? Like, what am I going to have? So I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the OBE. And maybe I think and that's what, you know, getting back to your question before, I think you know, each step requires, you know, a shift. And so that fear is going to strip off, and it will enable me to explore more if I choose to. In the same way that, you know, took ayahuasca 10 years ago, and that helped me to combat my fear of death. And that probably allowing me to, you know, explore OBEs now. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least from that perspective. I think there's a lot of fear people have around having an an out of body experience, like, will you come back and what? But that's not the fear for me. The fear for me is like, what am I going to see when I'm there? And what other things am I going to have to shift that I'm not even expecting to? Or so, yeah, it's interesting because I didn't think I would be making the connection between the entities people are seeing and, you know, there are a lot of theories people have. And I think that's part of the issue as well, right? There's no common belief system or structure when it comes to this stuff. So I'm like, in some ways, are we talking about people's beliefs, their belief system? Are people's belief systems seeping into this? Or is there a common structure? Or is everyone seeing slightly different things because of that? So what am I going to see? Like, is my belief system going to seep into what I see in the OBE? So I'm
Understand. Is
curious about
reality
that.
subjective? Is reality
Yeah,
subjective or is objective?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we can all
It feels
see
like
the
there's a
physical
layer.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. It feels like there's this layer. And that's the thing. I feel like the OBE is just like, it's almost like this Venn diagram. Like, imagine there's like a, you know, dimensional Venn diagram. So other dimensions, and they intersect with and it feels like the OBE is that. And that is very much still you're still connected to yourself. And so maybe a lot of our beliefs are seeping into that, but maybe there's another layer that you strip or you go to from there. And that's what I'm curious about. But yeah.
If there's part of you that still has some fears of the experience, which is understandable, but we can continue talking about this offline. So a friend who's a channeler, uh, British like you, her name is Gail. I've interviewed her this week. She teaches a course for astral hygiene, for really taking care of your energy field, your energy levels, etc., and deal with this kind of potential worries and fears. Because when you go into the astral realm, and in an OBE, you are in the astral space, right? You interact with energies that can be very different from you. So if you're in a state of fear, maybe you mirror and attract experiences
Yeah.
that are fearful, right? And so
Yeah.
if there's fear in you, maybe looking at astral hygiene as a practice to prepare for going further into this could unlock
Yeah.
something for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm very much open to a lot of content at the moment in this space, like, and just understanding from people, the things that I've got to do. Like, hence, you know, with the conversations with Graham, like hoping to be able to learn from his experiences as well around certainly the fear side of it and how to combat that. But yeah, the energy stuff, bring it on. Bring it on,
I'll
Antonia,
send
bring
you.
it on. I've got some
I'll
other
send you the
books as well
details.
that I was recommended that I need to get on top of. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely, my goal is over the next year to have a proper OBE, be able to turn back and see myself sleeping. Like, that's my goal. That's my goal for
Yeah,
sure.
I've tried, to be honest, I've tried as well. And I
Yeah.
spent a couple of months trying to do it. And I believe that I went into an out of body in a dream state that felt completely
Okay.
real, but I was never able to see myself on
Okay.
the room, and every time the room looked different, so it was clearly a dream.
Mm.
But there were
Mm.
couple of cases, and one in particular was super strong, where
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm out of my body, so I wanna go and see my mom. I was in Spain. I was
Mm.
in London. My mom was in Italy, and all of a sudden, I felt myself pulled through space and
Yeah.
going through houses and seeing people
Wow.
passing through wall, and it was super
Oh,
intense.
wow.
I could see myself flying at blah blah blah. But then eventually I never got to the destination. I was snapped back into my body,
It's your body.
and
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. It was so real. But then I woke up and say, okay, but I know I didn't see my room the way it was. So maybe it was a
Mm.
dream, because maybe it was just
Mm.
imagination. So I'm still not past the doubt that I was not dreaming and it was a real
Mm.
experience.
Mm. Yeah. I see. This is the thing. Like, I'm starting to wonder how much of a connection there is between the dream state and how much of it is about how much of your consciousness is present. If that, whatever conscious, whatever that is. So I feel like it's something to do with like bringing the conscious state in, and it could be a lucid, yeah, and even the connection between lucid dreams and out of body, because it's this, yeah, and I want to explore that as well, and just
Yeah.
gain a bit more of an understanding of the theoretical, connection.
One thing that I've heard, and I don't know if this can help, and it's still connected to the fear, apart from the um, astral hygiene, right?
Mm,
If you listen to Bashar, the
mm,
Daryl Anka, who's a channeler that channels Bashar,
yeah.
who's this physical ET being. Whenever Bashar talks about the way you can get ready for contact with this being, he say, okay, if you want to really um, have contact, first of all, you need to
Mm,
pass your fear, because it's going to be shocking to see
mm,
an entity that is not looking like you, whether you see in a dream state, in the
yeah.
astral, or whether you see physically. So what he suggests is, okay, every time you go to bed and it's dark at night, you close um, your curtains, and you start imagining that across the curtain you can start seeing this entity, the outline of this entity. You start imagining
Mm,
how different it is, and you get yourself acquainted to this idea that you're seeing. It's not in the room, so it's not there.
okay.
You don't have to get scary, but you start imprinting in your mind this image of this being that could be completely
Okay.
different, and bit by bit you pass the fear that you have, because bit by bit that image is not going to be shocking anymore.
Mm,
And once you're not
mm,
shocked anymore by that, is when you're ready to actually have the
okay.
experience.
Okay. Okay. No, that's super cool. Yeah, send me that as well. I tell you, I need a list, mate. I need like a directory of all your content, because
This is
you've
the
got a bunch
problem,
of
that it takes
stuff.
too long. It's so much stuff out there. So much stuff.
There's a lot. There's a lot, and that's part of the issues. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of stuff to decipher. So I think, yeah, putting some structure around some of this stuff is certainly something I want to do
Yeah, but
a bit of.
absolutely let me know how things proceed, and I will continue to see, of course, the people that you're interviewing. I am halfway through no, more than halfway through the last video that you did, but of course that was a big departure, because it was a person talking about all sorts of experiences since she was very, very young age. But that's
Yeah.
what I've seen everywhere else, right? Even the people that I
Mm,
interview, it's never one thing at a time. If a person
mm.
has consistent OBEs, probably over time he gets to meet entities, right?
Oh,
Or he gets to see
100%. 100%. Like, even when talking to Graham, like, wow, okay, you're as a coach, like some of the things that he has experimented with that he hasn't even shared publicly. I'm like, wow, like you've had some, like shared death experiences and just, yeah, things that are just so wild to me. Like, so it's for sure, there's just like things people are, because I think once you get past that point, it's the navigation, right? Being able to consistently navigate yourself around this space. And I think it's like, being a kid again, like just learning to walk, learning to traverse the space. That takes time. You need to have a lot of experiences to be able to do that. And I think those people, whether it be the Dariuses or the Grahams of this world, they're on another level in terms of what they perceive reality to be, and all of those. And like you were saying, and it's interesting because, whether it be the channeler, it's like, how did you get to that? Like, what's the connection that you've made to get to that point? What does that look like? How does it go from meditation to all of a sudden your channel? What does that process look like? And I find that interesting. So when you were talking about Casey, the lady, I think that yeah, like, yes, she's, channeling entities. That's what, she claims that she's doing, but she's talking about how she made that jump. And that is really interesting for me, because I think, sometimes we see some of these people where you're like, you can automatically be like, wow, this is just woo woo, like I was saying right before. But actually, when they start talking about their processes, you can try and validate that. Is that an experience that you recognize that maybe you've had in the past? And then you can work backwards. And, even for myself, I realize now through the OBEs, I'm like, it took me back to when I was a kid, and I was like, oh God, I remember seeing an entity in in my hallway, that looked like a gremlin. And it was very real to me. Was that an OBE? Like, what was that? And I remember
Yeah.
going, running to my brother's room and be like, "Ah," like, but for me, even now, I can visually see that memory. I'm like, no, I saw an entity in the hallway. I saw
Yeah.
something that looked, but
And
anyway,
for the
but yeah.
people that, for the people that, again, it's very difficult to pass the idea that this is just woo, because it's been
Mm.
ingrained in our mind by governments, by education systems, by the mainstream
Popular
science.
culture. Yeah.
Exactly, that this is all bullshit, right? And
Mm.
and so I always need to bring myself back to those key data points that are out there about, okay, yeah, the CIA is investing millions into this research. The people
Mm.
that have scientists that have described the chemistry of the brain and how it changes when people that claim to have these experiences all connect, and they're plugged into special ECG machine, or they
Yeah.
are captured by special cameras capturing the way their body heat changes, etc., during
Yeah.
that meditation. And then there are even people like NASA scientists that have their own protocols where they do Kundalini yoga and cleanse their body, don't drink coffee, they go into meditation, and they claim that they connect to these entities, right? So we're talking
Mm.
about not just you and me, we're talking about scientists at the highest level of the US government,
Incredible, very credible positions. Yeah.
scientists saying, I've been studying this for tens of years. Even the person that you were mentioning about the telepathy tape is an Harvard educated neuroscientist, right? So this is
Mm.
not simply um, the TV producer that produced the telepathy tapes. She actually
Yeah.
produced a show because she got in contact with scientists that had done this research for 20 years with these kids, right?
Mm. Mm.
I think that we're in the middle of a process of transformation. Maybe 5 years from
Mm.
now, maybe less than 5 years, this is not going to be woo woo anymore. But for
Mm.
sure, I don't feel already that is woo woo when I look at it. It's
Mm.
my life, my perception of reality already changed
Yeah.
on this subject, right?
Yeah. No, agreed. Like, and hence, us putting time and effort in exploring all of this stuff. It's yeah, I've definitely gone past that point of like, there is something here. There's something here, 100%. Um, it's just, what is it? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Um, and how does it relate to us and who we are, and how much of our, yeah, how many abilities could we potentially have, as a result of all of this stuff? Especially when, thinking about the telepathy tapes again, and some of these kids and some of the things that they're able to do, almost being able to tap into this, what's it called, the hill,
Yeah.
and the telepathy and all of that, which, it's just the gaining an understanding of, like, how does this all work, and what can we learn about the nature of reality? What can we learn about consciousness, our role, in the universe, and beyond? And you know, is there a key to what happens beyond our individual lives on this planet, as Antonio and Emma and all that kind of thing? So I think it's
Yeah.
exciting. I think it's a really excited time to be alive, because there's a lot more going on. There's lots more. Um, a lot of this stuff is being taken more seriously, and it's becoming more broad and mainstream. It's not like, hushed conversations that you have with people, and
Yeah.
now it's like, we can have channels, and we can talk about this stuff, and we can interview people, and we can go really deep, and yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I don't think I would have had this conversation, at least publicly.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, at some point, I'll tell my experiences and what brought me
Mm.
to this place. But yeah, it's
I'm looking
exciting.
forward to that, Antonio. I'm looking forward to that.
And I will do it. I will do it in your podcast.
Oh, yes, I can't wait. Everyone heard that. Everyone
Not
heard that. So
tomorrow.
it's happening. It's
Not
happening. Not tomorrow. Not tomorrow.
not
Poco a
tomorrow.
poco.
Well, darling,
Cool.
thank you very much for your time. It's been an
No.
absolute pleasure as usual,
Yeah, thank you, Anto. Really, really great to be on here and to talk about this stuff. It's important,
and we will continue talking offline.
for sure. 100%.
Thank you so much for watching. Something is Up is still at the very beginning, so every bit of support makes a huge difference in my ability to bring you more amazing stories and incredible guests. If you enjoy this conversation and feel called to support the channel, I'd be super grateful if you could just click the like and subscribe buttons and share the video with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.